Hey, hey, welcome to the Monkees interview show right here on monkeysradio.com, where we get to speak to some really cool people who have connections with the Monkees, love the Monkees, were Monkees, played with the Monkees, any of the above. And tonight we have a very special guest, possibly the most famous musician you've never heard of. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to my friend Andy Cahan. Andy, how are you?
I'm just really happy to be here. My last name is Khan. Did you say that? I couldn't hear it.
No, I didn't. I pronounced it like phonetically, and actually, Khan is wasn't he what the Star Trek villain? But I think it was spelled differently.
Yes, it's a great name. I have many children. I have Pecan, Ali Khan, Yukon, Nikon, Genghis Khan, Kubla Khan, Anybody Khan, and Garbage Khan.
As long as you're not a con man, that's all I care about.
That's exactly the truth. I'm not a con man.
Andy, you have so many connections to the Monkees, uh, aside from your friendships with them, with Zappa, with Jimi Hendrix. I mean, we can go on and on. But let's first start about you. Now, would I be best describing you as an original member of the Turtles?
Uh, I joined the Turtles in 1973,
Mm-hmm.
and they just left Frank Zappa,
Gotcha.
and they're doing the Flo and Eddie albums
Yes.
on Columbia, Illegal, Immoral, and Fattening, and Moving Targets on Columbia Records.
Oh, great pop rock stuff on those records. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
we had the best band in the world, Craig Cranf on drums, and Phil Reed on the guitar, and Eric Scott on bass. And we were the best band that the Turtles ever had.
Then you had amazing vocalists. I mean, besides yourself contributing to the stuff, Howard is probably one of the most, gosh, underrated vocalists in that whole era.
Howard Kalin is equal to John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And, Howard is a perfect singer. He can color his voice any way, and it sounds amazing. I produced an album with Howard
Yeah.
at Billy Bob Thornton's home.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Dust Bunnies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to tell you that he's certainly the most versatile. You might have some people argue with putting him on the level of, the gods of John and Paul. But it's okay because the Turtles loved the Beatles. I mean, that was, who they worshipped. Am I right?
Well, that is the whole reason why the Turtles manager called the band the Turtles, was because of the Beatles.
It's so funny because you had your Crickets started off, and then there was the Beatles and the Animals and the Turtles, and the funniest line came from some of the Motown groups who were, of course, the Temptations, the Tops, the Supremes, and they said, no, we don't want to name ourselves after animals. It was such a good line.
I know. That was a magical, very magical time
And I,
when the Beatles came out and the British invasion. To me, that was the most magical musical time in history, and that's what created the Monkees.
of course, and another animal name, of course. But isn't that what the Beatles were? What got you into music? Yes.
Absolutely. In my book, I explain I was making Frankenstein and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman
Uh huh.
and Revenge from Planet Four. I
Uh-huh.
was making 8 millimeter sound movies with my neighborhood friends. I was a little Steven Spielberg. And then my sister said, "You gotta watch Ed Sullivan show tonight." And it completely, totally changed my life right there and then. Forget about it. I wanted to be a Beatle.
You know, it's funny because we're shared similarities. My first memory in life is seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and there's a picture of me with a Beatles poster behind me playing with my Aurora models, and I had Frankenstein and Dracula and all the Universal monsters. So I mean, and growing up, you know, we were monster kids. If you especially, I don't know if it was a New York thing or all over the U.S., but you know, I grew up loving the Mets. I grew up loving baseball, the Beatles, and monsters.
Well, then you grew up in New York. Did you watch Zachary?
Of course, I'm a Bronx boy. I grew up watching Chiller Theater, of course.
Oh, yeah. Zachary was my favorite. Are you kidding? I
Oh,
would love to watch his show. It was the best.
then you must be a fan of the Monkees episode, the Monster episode. But we'll be talking about the Monkees in a second. We're talking now with the author of the most famous musician you've never heard of, and he might possibly be that. Andy Cahan, you were pretty much a one-man wrecking crew, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yes, because not only have I produced, arranged, and wrote and recorded and toured and did television, but I also had my own recording studio. It was called the Demo Doctor. And Harry Nielsen, Ringo Starr, Eric Carmen, Howard Kalin, a lot of uh, Janet Jameson, for God's sakes.
Wow.
She recorded in my studio.
Jenna Jameson, the famous porn star.
Yes, and she was doing voiceover, just wild voiceover, moaning and groaning.
Okay. You mentioned Nilsson. I mentioned earlier your monkey connections with Zappa and Hendrix, but of course Harry Nilsson, wrote Cuddly Toy, was friends with Mickey, wrote The Point that Mickey and Davy starred. How did you come about working with Harry Nilsson?
In 1989, uh, there was an Alice Cooper, Clarence Clemens Oktoberfest concert at Universal City Studios.
Uh-huh.
And at that event, there were 40 radio stations from across the country who set up tents, and each tent was a different radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the satellite dishes and the transmission vans and all that stuff.
Yep.
So every rock star that you can possibly imagine was there for interviews with these 40 radio stations. Paul McCartney, Harry Nilsson, everybody, Eric Burden, the Monkees, Mickey Dolenz. And that's where I played you that YouTube video of me performing I'm a Retriever.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute. So this was like a who's who of contemporary artists all at this one place. All of this, was it a convention, what was it exactly?
Yeah, it was, so Flo and Eddie had their own K-Rock New York Howard Stern radio show.
Right.
After Howard Stern, they came on in the afternoon.
Right.
Flo and Eddie.
Right.
So they were one of these tents. So Mark Volman hired me. He hired me to drive a limousine and pick up Harry Nilsson and pick up Eric Burden and pick up Bobby Hatfield and, all these celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
and take them to the tent, and we'd sing Happy Together with the celebrity. And then we'd sing a celebrity hit. And it would be a live interview, and I'd be the keyboard guy and the limousine driver.
That's amazing. You were you talk about wearing many hats and being multiple needed. You're not usually the limo driver and the keyboard player on this. But
Yes, I know.
But I guess when you work with Flo and Eddie, you had to be the most versatile of everything. You listen to their material. post Turtles, and even it's just everywhere. It's from reggae to country to rock to pop.
Yes, I recorded with the Bob Marley's band on a reggae album called Rock Steady with
Mhm.
Flo and Eddie.
Oh my
And
God.
it's on Epiphany Records, and I do an organ solo. But these are all the Tough Gone Studio Bob Marley musicians. I'm the only white guy there, beside Flo and Eddie.
That's great. So tell us how you first connected with the monk. We know how you connected with the Turtles and the years you were with them, and of course, big contemporaries. The Monkees were getting hits. The Turtles were great at getting hits. How did you connect with the Monkees?
Well, before I did that radio thing with them with Mickey singing "I'm a Retriever,"
Yeah.
uh, we did a lot of concert tours.
Yes.
We would open for the Monkees. In fact, there was a tour with the Turtles, the Monkees, and the Animals. We were all on the same friggin' tour,
Wow.
and that was like you said, it was an animal tour.
It was a zoo.
Yeah, it was a zoo tour.
Probably in more ways than one.
But just going back to that Flo and Eddie radio show at Universal City,
Yes.
that's where I met Harry Nielsen.
Oh, right, right, right.
And of course, he wasn't doing music at that time. He started a script company that provides scripts to television and movies.
Mm-hmm.
And he sold his piano, he sold his guitar, and he wasn't playing any music. So after the interview, after I drove him home in the limo, I invited him to come over to my living room, and I was going to get him back into music again and have him start recording music.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so excited and he was so happy. And we became like high school friends.
Wow.
We stuck around till 4 o'clock in the morning, driving in his Mercedes, listening to his music, singing at the top of our lungs. I mean, he would take me to Timothy Leary's house,
Oh, God.
Joe Walsh, all these cool celebrities. And of course, Ringo came over to my living room because Harry Nielsen and Ringo were doing a children's story, sort of like Nielsen's The Point, but it was already released children's books. And Ringo did narration, and Van Dyke Parks and myself and Harry were going to do the music.
Uh-huh.
But unfortunately, Harry passed away, and that whole project never came to fruition.
Oh, so I don't know of the Turtles, Monkees, Animals tour. Was this in the 70s? When did that take place?
In the 80s. It wasn't a tour. We did a couple of gigs together where all three acts were on the bill.
Okay, because I'm very familiar, of course, with the Happy Together tours, which the Flo and Eddie Turtles, they were really the headliners for that. And then David Fishoff, the promoter, bounced off and brought in the Monkees. So it was the Monkees, the Grassroots, Gary Puckett, and Herman's Hermits.
Yes.
Which was in '86. So you're saying in the 80s there was also a few gigs, a few one-offs that had the Monkees, the Turtles, and the Animals.
Yes, it was Eric Burden. It wasn't billed as the Animals. It was billed as Eric Burden.
Gotcha. And that would have been Davey, Mickey, and Peter.
Yeah. So I think it could have been late 70s. I don't recall, but I do remember all three acts were on the same bill, and I laughed myself. I went, "Oh my God, that's hilarious!"
Andy, it wasn't Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart as the Monkee touring act.
Yes.
Ah, okay. So then it had to be 70s. Oh, that's cool. Right. Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So I did. I'll tell you a really funny story about the Monkees and Flo and Eddie.
Yes.
There was a time when I wasn't with the Turtles. I went through a divorce and my musical chops weren't up. So they changed the members of the band, and I was just doing television and weird stuff with them instead of touring.
Right.
But in any event, when I rejoined the Turtles in 1990, whatever it was, they made up a story about me that I was the guy who played the piano part on this famous song by the Monkees. And it was, I'm a retriever. No, it wasn't that. It was Daydream Believer, the opening line.
Oh, nicely done. I love the way you jumped in and did that.
Yeah, so the audience would cheer and applaud, thinking that Andy was the keyboard player on this song. But it was a big lie. Flo and Eddie love to lie on purpose.
Just as a group.
They would tell the audience that the drummer played with Santana, and that the guitar player played with Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the bass player played with the Four Tops, but it was all lies. It was all made up.
Uh-huh.
And some guy had a website, a Monkees website, and he says, "Who is this guy, Andy Cahan? He never played piano with the Monkees. He never did anything with the Monkees. Who was this guy? He didn't play, Daydream Believer. That wasn't Andy." So it turned into this big fiasco, and thousands of people got online complaining that it wasn't Andy playing piano on that Monkees song.
And you never said it was. It was one of Flo and Eddie's goofs they were just on stage goofing around.
Yes, actually, there is a radio station in Colorado when we played the Greens. The song, I forgot the name of the venue. Anyway, they interviewed Mark Volman, and he said, "Yeah, I'm lying. It's not true." But I wanted to tell you about, I did a 1980 recording session for Davy Jones on a Rhino record called Pool It.
Oh, of course.
And I'm playing on a song called I'll Love You Forever that Davy Jones wrote and sang.
Andy, you ready for this?
What?
That was my wedding song.
I can't believe it.
And I'll tell you why. But first, we're going to take a break and play that song. You're listening to Charles Rosenay's Monkees interview show on the MONKEESradio.com. We're talking to Andy Cahan, the most famous musician you've never heard of. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about this song, I Will Love You Forever, Davy Jones. You just heard I Will Love You Forever from the Pool It album by Davy Jones, a song that he actually wrote and would always perform in his solo shows. And Andy, I got to tell you, when I proposed to my wife, I didn't exactly do that. Davy did it on my behalf. It was at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. We had gone, a friend of mine, my girlfriend, my wife-to-be, and my dad, we went to the casino to see Davy. I had gotten word to him that I wanted to propose to my wife, and would he dedicate it, and would he play that song, and would he ask on my behalf? And he did, and I can't believe you played piano on the Pool It version of that.
I am the piano player on that song, yes.
Wow. We have 6 degrees of separation between us that I would never have known.
It's a small world. I mean, in all my travels, my book, by the way, is really doing very, very well. I got 27 5-star reviews on Amazon already.
Wow.
Because the stories, Jimi Hendrix and Tiny Tim and Ray Bolger, and there's so many different celebrities, Billy Bob Thornton, just all this stuff in my life. I'm 73 years old, and I was able to save every photo contract, letter, postcard, sticker, button. I saved everything.
See,
So that was really easy to build the book.
so the problem with a successful book like that is the name doesn't apply. The next book will have to be formerly the most famous musician you never heard of, because the book has now made you famous, and people like myself who didn't know you except for maybe the Turtles or a few musical things, or have seen your name but never made a big deal of it, now realize how many things you did with Ringo, with Zach, with on and on and on. And this is great. The book is amazing, and I thank you for mentioning it. If people want to get the book, what's the best way to do that? Please tell me.
I am all over the internet. All you have to do is take your little cell phone and press the little microphone and say, the most famous musician you've never heard of. And I will pop up 1,000,000 times up on your screen, and you'll be able to read a sample chapter of my book with Harry Nilsson, Joe Walsh, Timothy Leary, Ringo. It's really a fun time for me. It came right at the time of COVID. My
Right.
book was released right when COVID hit.
Which is it's a plus and a minus. Yeah, it's a plus because you have time to interview, you have time to promote, but the minus is you can't sit and sign and do, book signings, right?
And it's like the best calling card in the world. If I play a concert or a gig, I can sell my book at the gig.
Right.
It's great. And then on stage, I can say, this is a song from my book.
That's true. Well, see now, you talk about the book and you talk about your career and all the people you've come in contact with, and considering that you might be one of the most famous musicians that people never heard of, doesn't that also apply with the Wrecking Crew, who played on, all those Monkee hits and all that? So were you ever a member of the Wrecking Crew?
No, but it's like a lot of people have told me that it's, since I've done so many things with so many people, I'm like a universal musician who's been there and done that with everybody. And that's basically what the Wrecking Crew is, played on everybody's hit record.
It's true. All right, so let's backtrack. So the first time you're in contact with the guys is in this tour where you're playing with Dolenz Jones, Boyce and Hart, Eric Burdon, and the Turtles. And what was your first impression of Mickey and Davey? How were they with you?
They were so sweet and funny and great. These guys are like the Turtles to me. They're very down home, easygoing, funny guys. They're fun. Mickey is hilarious.
Well, that the two bands, that's a calling card for them. Aside from great, catchy songs, both of them excelled in humor. The Turtles are hilarious, and the Monkees, of course, look at their show. It was built around comedy.
George Carlin was Howard Kalin's idol. He is Howard. If you look at the humor of Flo and Eddie with Howard with his crazy, like from Illegal, Immoral, and Fattening, the pop star dildo and all that. George Carlin is really like another Howard. They're both identical in their humor.
And you know what? That's what makes it great. That's what makes it special. Even tracking back to the Beatles, they had a sense of humor, and that's such an important part of going to that next level of being phenomenal. I think you can have hit after hit after hit. You see that with the Grassroots, with Three Dog Night, with so many bands. But to have the personality and the humor and the charisma, that's the third M. There's the music, the memories, and the magic. And I think only some of those bands ever get the magic.
I know there are some bands that really do not do well live. But then there's other bands that kick ass live, and of course, Paul McCartney to me is the top ass kicker.
Yeah.
I mean, his his shows, his musicians, Brian and all these guys. I mean, these are incredible musicians, and Paul is a genius. And to me, his show is the best live concert.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I 100% agree. 3 hours of nonstop. Oh, it's heaven. It's amazing with McCartney. Did you ever meet Paul? Did you have any contact with Paul?
Yes, it was at that same Universal City Studio thing where I was driving a limo.
Right.
Paul had a press conference in the amphitheater, and so he recognized Flo and Eddie,
Right.
from the Turtles, because they were radio station guys in the audience asking Paul questions. So he gets up off the stage and he walks up the bleachers to go and shake hands with Flo and Eddie.
Wow.
So that was quite a magical moment.
It's great when there's that mutual respect. I didn't realize that Flo and Eddie and McCartney had that. We know that the Beatles and the Monkees had it, and from what you're telling me, the Monkees and the Turtles have it. We never knew that McCartney had that with those guys. Let me ask you, Flo and Eddie. People who don't know their post Turtle stuff. Everyone knows Happy Together, and everyone knows It Ain't Me, Babe, and Some Girl. Hit after hit. Eleanor and You Showed Me. It's great stuff. Why wasn't the Flo and Eddie stuff top 40 hits? Why weren't there, charted stuff from that?
Well, they had, I think, 6 or 7 number one hits.
Flo and Eddie?
Well, maybe 4. I know that She'd Rather Be With Me was number one in England.
Turtles.
Yeah. Happy Together was number one.
Turtles.
Eleanor was number one.
Turtles.
It ain't me, babe.
Those are all Turtles. I'm asking you, after post Turtles, after the Turtles, Flo and Eddie put out great stuff. Why weren't those songs hits? Is what I'm asking.
It's political. It's this awful, strange music industry we live in. Harry Nilsson was in my living room for 4 years, and we're breaking our asses trying to get a really great Harry Nilsson song.
Mm-hmm.
But now Mark Hudson took my masters that I did with Harry and released them.
Oh, wow.
Without giving me any credit whatsoever. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that. But what I do want to talk about is that Harry Nilsson couldn't get a record deal. And you're asking me why Flo and Eddie post Turtles, they got record deals, but no big hits.
Right.
And there was a song called Rebecca that was on Illegal, Immoral, and Fattening. And that we did that on the Dinah Shore show. And that was one of our hits. And then on Lloyd Thaxton, we did Keep It Warm. It's I know
it, of course. Great song.
And every time on stage, when I play that piano part, the intro to Keep It Warm, the audience would go nuts.
Really?
We did this on the Jefferson Starship Red Octopus tour. And that's when I met Gracie, and Marty Ballin was my makeup artist on stage. I would do a Billy Preston impersonation, and Marty Ballin would help me with my afro wig and my Hollywood sunglasses so I can be Billy Preston.
Oh, that's hysterical. If fans who aren't familiar with the Turtles and your stuff, aside from the Turtles hits, should definitely listen to those 2 songs. Keep It Warm, and there's there's another one, Mama, I Came.
Mama, Open Up. Yeah, there's an Australian video.
Mama, Open Up is great.
In 1978 in Sydney, Australia.
And then the other one you mentioned, Rebecca, I reviewed that, saying that should be a couplet with Eleanor. Eleanor should mix right into Rebecca.
I know, they're wonderful songs. I loved Rebecca like crazy. I loved Rebecca. And there's a song on the Moving Targets album that
Yeah.
I am extremely proud of because they did all the string arrangements and the horn arrangements around my piano part. It was a song called Best Possible Me on the Moving Targets album.
I've heard it, but I don't recall it. People are surprised. Would be surprised to know that the Flo and Eddie were playing saxophones, were adding horn parts. You see Mark Volman in concert, and he's just standing there like a schlub, just playing tambourine. But he had great musical chops.
Yeah, Howard and Mark played in a surf band called the
Crossfire.
Crossfire
Yeah.
at Manhattan Beach. Whatever, the airport, LAX. That's where they all lived.
And if someone can hear that stuff, you'll hear shades of the Ventures and the Tornadoes and the Champs. That's great surf instrumental stuff with a twist, because some of it's novelty, some of it's got the Lone Ranger in there, some of it's got Christmas songs. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I grew up on surf music. I mean, before I really got into the Beatles, I was in a surf band called the Jaguars, and everybody had a Fender Jaguar, 3 of them.
Andy, when we get to the end of the program, I'm going to ask you your 3 favorite Monkee songs, which is probably hard to do, but we're far away from that. Right now, we're going to take another quick break. You're listening to Charles Rosenay's Monkees interview show here on Monkees Radio. We're talking to Andy Cahan, the most famous musician you've never heard of, member of the Turtles, and played and recorded and did with so many amazing artists. But we got to take a break, and we're also taking a break from the Monkees playlist. How could we have a member of the Turtles without playing Happy Together?
Well, you know what? I would love to tell you that Howard Kalin was unable to tour. Are you aware of that from the last 3 years of Happy Together tour? They
Yep.
had Ron Dante.
Ron Dante's doing the vocals for him.
Now, they wanted to put out a live CD of the show at the concert to sell.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't want Ron Dante to sing Happy Together. They wanted Howard to sing Happy Together.
Right.
So Ron Dante got a track of the band playing Happy Together, and they sent it to me, and I put it on my Pro Tools, and then Howard came over my house, and he sang Happy Together in my living room.
That's incredible.
For the Happy Together 2019 CD on tour, it's Howard singing Happy Together in my living room to a live band track on stage.
Wow. So you not only just heard Happy Together, the original version by the Turtles, but you've got an inside story as to how the 2019 Happy Together tour concert album was able to feature Howard, even though he didn't tour on it.
Exactly.
That's incredible. Is Howard doing well, or he just thought, he's toured enough? Why didn't he join the tour?
There's some health reasons why he can't go on touring.
Well, Ron Dante is a great, fill-in, because Ron is a beautiful soul, a great guy, one of the finest gentlemen in the music business.
Yes, he produced Barry Manilow
for many years, and of course was the voice of the Archies and so many other things. And he's a good friend of the Monkees, and he's a good friend of mine. So thank you for doing a shout out to Ron Dante. We appreciate that. Let's go from extreme to extreme. Ready? From Ron Dante to Hendrix. Tell us about how Hendrix, who opened for the Monkees, what your connection is with Jimi Hendrix.
In 1968, I moved from New York to LA. And my mom was good friends with a record company executive named Irwin Garr. And he had a label called Pulsar Records, which was a subsidiary of Mercury Records.
Okay.
So the artists on that label was Dr. John the Night Tripper, Mac Rabenak, a guy named Graham Bond from the Graham Bond organization in England with Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce before they got together with Eric Clapton. And
Wow.
it was called the Graham Bond Organization. And so Graham would do all these recording sessions, and my job was the gopher. I would drive the VW bus and go get the mail and go get the coffee and take the musicians to the recording sessions.
Wow.
And I was 20 years old. I just moved to LA. I've been in LA 2 months, and I'm working as a gopher at this record company. So Graham Bond calls me up. Andy, get your harpsichord. I was playing the harpsichord, electric harpsichord.
Wow.
So I put it in the VW. I pick up Graham Bond and his wife, Diane, and we drive to Sunset and Gower, and there was a studio there called TTG, and that's where Jimi Hendrix always recorded when he was in Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
So I had no idea who was going to be there. So I'm setting up my harpsichord. Mitch Mitchell is setting up the drums. Lowell George is playing flute. And Jack Cassidy from the Airplane is on the bass. And Graham Bond is on the Hammond B3.
Wow.
So I feel something behind my back. I feel this thing. And I turn around, and there is Jimi Hendrix walking in the room with two beautiful young blonde chicks.
Mm-hmm.
And one was carrying his amplifier, and one was carrying his guitar.
They were his brothers.
And he comes in and he sets up right next to me.
Wow.
He sets up a chair right next to me, plugs in, and we play the blues in the key of A for 2 hours without stopping.
What a memory.
And then we smoked a joint at the end of the evening and pretended we were a rock band with our mouths. Jimmy would play the guitar with his mouth, and we'd pass the joint, and I'd play the drums with my mouth, and then this roadie guy would play the bass. So we were a power trio in the corner of the studio, 1968, smoking a joint with Jimi Hendrix.
Well, you know, the Monkees loved Hendrix and wanted him, you know, to open for their tour, and it just wasn't the right mix. But we're going to jump to another name here. You know, Frank Zappa was on the Monkees episode, The Monkees Blow Their Minds, and he was also in their film Head. But of course, he was a big partner of Flo and Eddie's. So you must have had a lot of contact with Frank Zappa.
Well, I played with Frank Zappa in 2 different bands. In 1968, I started a band with Jimmy Carl Black, the Indian of the group.
Mm-hmm.
It was an original member of the Mothers of Invention.
Uh-huh.
He started a band called Geronimo Black, and it was with Bunk Gardner and Roy Estrada and Denny Wally, Tom Levy, and myself. But in any event, Frank Zappa would come to our gigs and get up on stage and lead the band like he always does, you know,
Sure.
with emotions, you know, loud, soft, fast, slow, you know, whatever. And then later on, when I joined the Turtles, Frank Zappa would come up on stage and do the same shit again.
Of course.
So I got to play on stage with Frank in 2 different bands, the Turtles and Geronimo Black. And the highlight was going over to his house up on Mulholland, and he had a studio in his living room, and the band, the piano was down a 10-foot hole, like a big 20-foot circle in the living room floor with a ladder, and you walk down the ladder into this circular room with 1 microphone, and there was the piano. So Frank Zappa wanted to show Jimmy Carl Black a song he wrote that he wanted Jimmy to record. Mm-hmm. And it was called Falling in Love is a Stupid Habit. and it's on YouTube. Anyway, so Frank shows me the piano shows me the piano part. So I sit at the piano, and Frank sings the song so Jimmy Carl Black can learn it. But that was with Motorhead Sherwood. It was Motorhead, Jimmy, and me that went to Frank's house. So to me, hanging out with Frank in his house, holy shit.
Gosh, we're all over the place, and I want to talk about you recording "I'm a Believer, I'm a Retriever" with Mickey. We get to that in a second, and we're also going to get to your 3 favorite Monkees songs in descending order, right here on the Monkees interview show here on MonkeesRadio.com. Andy Cahan, the most famous musician you've never heard of. I don't know if there's a Monkees connection with this guy, but I am a huge Raspberries fan, and I love this guy's voice. I've loved everything he's ever done, and I don't know if there's a Monkees connection with Eric Carmen, but what's your connection?
Well, since I recorded with Ringo Starr and Harry Nilsson and Jimmy Webb, the Music Connection magazine printed a photo of me and Ringo. And Eric Carmen saw the photo. And he says, hey, I want to do that too. Mm-hmm. So he called me up. He says, can I come in and make some demos with you? And I said, hey, are you Eric Carmen, the Eric Carmen, the Raspberries? You're the guy all by myself? And he says, that's me. So he came over and we recorded 10 songs in my living room that he wrote pre-Raspberries, before the Raspberries were formed. He wrote these 10 songs. And the reason we recorded these songs was because he had to get out of a publishing deal. He had to provide them with 10 more songs to get out of the deal. Uh-huh. So those are the 10 songs he recorded in my living room, and they are completely awesome.
That was released? What was the album?
Nope, never released. It was all demo, never released. It's sitting in his living room. I mean, he never released it. Unreleased.
I think a lot of Monkee fans are hopefully Raspberry fans. If they're not, they should listen to some of the stuff beyond the hits. There's an epic song called "I Can Remember," which just still gives me chills. Eric Carmen is we're talking about unsung heroes and people, who maybe you never heard of. I know people have heard of Eric Carmen, but there's so much more to him than just the Raspberry hits. Just like there's so much more to Flo and Eddie than the Turtle hits, and just like there's so much more to you, Andy Cahan, the most famous musician that people may not have heard of, or hopefully hearing about you and buying your book.
I know it's going to be fun. I picture myself on a Tonight Show, and they're going to say, "You're no longer the most famous musician. You're now a famous musician. You have to change the title of your book."
So what's the sequel going to be called?
Sue Me.
There's already too much of that in the music world. All right. Before we talk about your Mickey recording, because I'm going to hope that my producer can actually play it when we take the break for that. My question is that one of your 3 favorite songs that's going to come up at the end?
Yes.
What number is it?
It's probably number 1 because I played on it.
Then we won't get to that yet. We'll tell the story when we get to it. In descending order, if we have to pick 3 of your favorite Monkees songs, what would number 3 be?
Probably "I'll Love You Forever."
Wow, and we played it earlier, so we're not going to play it now, but I just want to tell people, that has such special meaning to me, and it's so awesome that you played on it and that it. I mean, that's one of the songs that if you're not, if you're listening to Monkees Radio, you're obviously a Monkees fan, and it. You hopefully love it as much as I do. But if you're not a diehard Monkees fan, you may not know that song.
Right, it's on the Pull It album. It's 1980.
Pull It is 87.
Oh, really? It was 1987?
Yeah, yeah, I think so because they had made their reunion in '86.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
That's okay.
It's all that LSD I took back in 1967.
No, it's been recorded other times, so maybe it was in. I don't know. Maybe it was on Maybe it was on something. I don't have my discography in front of me, and I don't claim to be an expert. I claim to be a fan, and as a fan, I just love talking about this great stuff and talking about the Monkees. And
You know,
do you
can I?
do you have another Davy story to give us?
Well, I have a Davy story, and I also have a Mickey story. Which one do you want to hear first?
Give me the Davy one now, because we were talking about "I Will Love You Forever."
Okay, well, I'm on an airplane with the Turtles and the Monkees, and we were flying to Belgium
Mm-hmm.
in 1990 something. I don't remember the exact year. And
Okay.
we played a concert with the Trogs, the Monkees, the Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who else? Oh, Procol Harum,
Uh-huh.
and one other, Slade or some heavy metal band. Anyway, so on the airplane, uh, I sat next to Davy Jones,
Okay.
and all we talked about were horses.
Horses, of course.
That's all we talked about. And I said, hey, I know some horse people too. I was telling them when I first rode a horse, they put the wrong bit on the horse. There's a thing called the straight bit or a snaffle, which is a broken bit. So
Uh-huh.
they put a straight bit on my horse, and it took off like a bat of hell, and it stopped short right in front of a pig pen, and I flew over the fence into the mud in a pig pen.
This is a
And so I told that story
story.
to Davey, and then he proceeded to tell me all these crazy stories about him trying to race and do all this racing stuff. And he was so great. What a wonderful guy.
Yeah, we lost him too soon. He was a good friend and he just wonderful, wonderful person. And that's an essential Davy song. I mentioned that it was my first wedding song. I grew up saying my first dance will always be the Beatles, Here, There, and Everywhere. So it was the two of them. One was just my bride and myself, and the other one we invited everyone to dance to. But it had to be that because David was nice enough to propose on my behalf with that song.
Oh, that is so amazing.
And it's so amazing
that
that
is
that song.
ultimate. It's ultimate. How could you beat that? You can't beat that.
Well, what's great is that you know it, and that it's the song that you picked as your number three of the top three favorite Monkey songs here on the Monkees interview show on monkeysradio.com. We're talking with Andy Cahan, the most famous musician you've never heard of is his nom de pleur, but it's also the name of his book. And I'm going to ask you, Andy, what is your second favorite Monkey song?
I'm a believer.
I thought it was going to be your first. It's your second?
Yeah, I think the first one
Don't
is
tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me. Hold it. Because we're going to play either the real version of I'm a Believer, or if my producer can find it on YouTube and we're allowed to do it, we're going to try to get on the version of you with Mickey doing I'm a Believer. So let's listen to that right now. Hold on. Okay, you've just heard I'm a Believer, which is Andy Cahan's second favorite song. Andy, tell us how you came about recording it with Mickey singing I'm a Retriever and how it wound up being recorded and being. Tell us about it.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there was this big Oktoberfest at Universal City Studios,
Yes,
and Mickey was one of the guests, one
yes.
of the people. So as soon as we sat down, we sang Happy together. And then Mark and Howard started talking about, the Monkees and Mickey and all that. And then at the end of the show, uh, it's on the YouTube. Mark Volman says, we've always wanted to sing this song with you, and we just so happen to have a keyboard player, and we're going to do it right now,
Uh huh.
And so I started the song off, and Mickey comments about my imitation of the guitar part where it goes, you know, and Mickey says, he knows it, you know. And then it's amazing, we did it in the exact same tempo as the original record. It just came out, Mickey was so used to singing it in that tempo. So I followed Mickey, and Mark and Howard were singing all the harmonies. So here I am with two turtles and a monkey.
Wow. A menagerie. Menagerie. There we go.
And then I went to YouTube and I downloaded the original version with the monkeys performing it.
The video.
You know, the regular video. Right. And then I removed their audio and put Mark and Howard and Mickey and me on.
And it synced
up perfectly.
It was
an amazing event. I really am very proud of that.
When I watched the YouTube, I had to do a double take because it fits so well.
Yeah, it's really funny as hell, especially when he does I'm a retriever.
Well, that's almost as bad as I'm a big eater. I couldn't feed her if I tried.
Right.
Andy, you know, we have one more song to ask you, which is your final super duper favorite Monkee song. But before we do, I want to tell the audience once again, if you haven't picked up this book, look it up, get it, find a way to put it in your collection, read it. It's Andy Cahan's The Most Famous Musician You've Never Heard Of. It's not only his story, but it's a story of all these great rock people that, you know, that he's come across through the years. It's literally a who's who of the, you know, the rock era. And it's written with such gusto, and you tell the story so well that we feel that, you know, we're part of your life. Thank you for that book. It really means a lot to everybody.
Well, yeah, it's really an exciting thing for me. And like I said, perfect timing with the pandemic, because when you're sitting around bored, what's better to do than to read a book?
Or write one. And that's what you did so well.
Yes, exactly.
And then I'll be honest with you, that's what I did during the pandemic. I wrote a book called The Top 10. It's the book of top 10 horror lists. And I asked celebrities and rock stars and athletes to give me their top 10 favorite horror movies. And I put together a book with Mickey Dolenz, Jane Whelan, from, you know, all these, Ed Asner, William Shatner, and it hasn't come out yet. It might be out by the time we listen to this interview, but it's at the printers. And it was something I did over the COVID break. And when people said, "What did you do?" and I said, "A book," and they go, "Oh, you finally read one?" And I said, "No, I wrote one." So
yeah.
It's great that, you know, that you're able to, you know, at least take advantage of a bad situation and get the word out about your book. You've done amazing interviews, and, you know, you've worked with so many great people that the legacy continues, and it's going to continue, of course, on Monkees Radio. And you're listening to the Monkees Interview Show. I'm your host, Charles Rosenay, with our special guest, Andy Cahan, who will now give us his number one favorite Monkees song.
The one I just played for you on the piano.
Well, Daydream Believer.
Yes.
Written by Jon Stewart, and on so many top lists of so many of my guests. Andy, I'm going to let you introduce Daydream Believer. Give it to me, buddy.
Introduce Daydream Believer?
Go ahead. Yeah, you're my DJ. Give it to me.
Okay. Here's Daydream Believer.
I could hide. We're not going further than that. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Monkees Interview Show with the musical guest, the author, the man who knew the Monkees and the Turtles and played in the Turtles and has endless lists of musical credits, the most famous musician you never heard of. Once again, thank you, Andy Cahan, for making this show such a fun, great interview.
You're totally welcome. You're totally welcome. I was going to say, if you Google Turtles Andy, you'll see a video in in 2012 of me performing on the stage with Flo and Eddie at the B.R. Cohen Winery in Sonoma, Glen Ellen, and they introduced me. Here's the guy who played the piano on this great song. And,
Right.
I start off with that, and
Yep.
the audience goes crazy, and we play the song, and Howard sings it. And it's on YouTube. So if you need me to help you find it, I'll help you.
Well, check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again on behalf of monkeesradio.com. And this is your host, Charles Rosenay. We're going to close out with Daydream Believer. Hey, hey, thank you, Andy.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.
Okay, bye-bye. Take care.